most times, but Chalet is something that's nice and fresh.
It's nice. You mentioned that Oregon's come up a lot. I'm getting flashbacks. Like, I've already casted EUL when Oregon was the hot new thing. Now, please let me move on to something new. So I'm very excited to see more Chalet. I'm also very excited to see these operator bans because, yeah, sure, Thatcher, he went out first. Zafir and Malusi, spicy.
Some very strange bans there for the side of FURIA.
I like it. I mean, I think, especially after we were talking about how flanking and roaming and all of this stuff is really important on this map. Those are two operators who I could totally see being really effective in that. And especially with someone like Malusi, for example, who has so much CC control, which is, or I should just say CC, which is what we mean by crowd control because of her Banshees. They really control your speed, your ability to move through certain areas of the map. Really, really interesting to have that taken off the board.
Continuing a point that I made earlier about this map and how we've sort of found ourselves here. Black Dragons have banned Chalet every single time they played, aside from that game against NIP, where it was in fact NIP that banned Chalet. So you can look at it from both sides, and you can go from the direction of Black Dragons have been banning it to save it for when they want to play it, or FURIA have not been banning it because they're hoping that their opposing team is going to ban it. But what it kind of tells me is there's potential for both these two teams to be very well prepared for what we're going to see here, and that could make for some quite hot competition coming into it. You couple that with the way that the bans have gone, and we've had some real staple operators just flat out removed, but of course it paves the way for the more typical operators that often do get banned to make their way into this matchup.
Yeah, for sure. Notably for me, I'm thinking Nomad is a big one to probably have on this map. One thing I also just want to mention that I'm really interested by is the fact that they've decided to come to kitchen and dining as their first site. I would argue, just anecdotally, that the most popular sites have been basement, top floor, and bar. We haven't seen much kitchen dining, and this is interesting. You're going to have to rely on a lot of vertical play, take control of the office and master space, which is where we're seeing this roam from Black Dragons, Live and Patoxy directly above the site. That's something that FURIA will have to be quite effective in clearing out for them to take control of the site itself below.
And there's one thing that's certain on Chalet, and that's that vertical control is going to be hotly contested, and that there's going to be a defender playing upstairs in piano, and that you're going to have to do something about that. And that's really what we're seeing displayed here from Black Dragons. I think that the setup is going to matter less and less as the rounds go on, regardless of where the site is. As long as it's either master bedroom or kitchen, you're going to be seeing very similar things indeed. I think a Selma charge just it sounded like it got exploded straight away, and I was like, what could have done that? But no, instead it actually detonated onto the wall, and it's going to further FURIA's advance here in taking this top floor control. But they've got so much to wade through.
Yeah, I actually really like the shieldsman and piano that Patoxy is hiding behind, because it just covers so much vertically. It does mean that he's going to have to peek around it rather than above it if he is to peek at all. But it still provides just so much cover, and Live is right there as well. So much more of that office wall is being opened up, and aided by the smokes will just conceal some of the information that Black Dragons could get of FURIA's whereabouts. But we're heading into the final minute, and FURIA, don't forget, still have to go downstairs to actually do anything on the site itself.
Still a lot of utility available in the hands of these capable defenders as well. And SMG11 is going to be unkind there to Live as he only deals chip damage over onto Rare. But still the Toxic Babes are in hand, and he can look to try and deny. Fancy finds himself a down. Is it going to be enough? Lender, he's confirmed a kill as well. So far, Black Dragon struggling to hold fast on this top floor, and you can already see them trying to scurry their way back downstairs, all but with the exception of Ion. He's going to be upstairs inside of the bathroom area, looking to try and challenge on through. Pre-fires as he goes. He wasn't anticipating the prone, but will find one. It does something, but is it enough? Because Yuna now is the last man standing. He's in a 1 versus 4, 10 seconds remain. Still frag grenades raining on come through. Zed-ping information for him, but full white flash. Only a matter of time until the peek came in, and it was, of course, from Rare.
Some of those engagements taken by FURIA were a little bit messy, but ultimately they got the job done, and that was what was needed. And that's one of the questions I think that will have to be asked and answered as this game goes on, is Black Dragons didn't relinquish any of their positions upstairs until they were killed out of those positions. And that meant that once FURIA took that space, there was no one but Yuna downstairs to try and hold. What you see a lot of teams do quite typically in most roaming setups is comes a point in the round where at least some of those roamers will retreat down to the site. Now, Black Dragons we have seen over the last couple of weeks are not necessarily the sort of team to like doing that. Iron and Live particularly often will be out on the field for a very long time. But this time, it turned out to be a route to their demise. Because when FURIA did take advantage of them, when they did kill them off, when they did double up, for example, in the bathroom and take those players by surprise, suddenly the site is left incredibly exposed. And that made it very easy for them to push down, despite the fact that there wasn't a ton of time left.
Are going to be our second site here. Black Dragons feeling they don't want to give it another go inside of Kitchen. They're still going to have to play vertically, but they do need to watch themselves, Gio, about how long they're spending out there on their own, because there's an argument to say that that costs them now. I understand that there's a want and a need in a lot of cases to play around that utility that you leave behind as a roamer, especially when you're doing quite a firm extended hold like we saw from Black Dragons. But there is more value in getting yourself back down onto the site to be another gun when it matters. I think Ion maybe got a little bit unfortunate there as well, only being able to gain the one kill. It looked as though he'd set himself up for a few, just lingering for a tad longer. But a new round and a new attack required for these Black Dragons.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting that to be at least one person present in Library, as well as we have live here in Solarium too, just because the Library is directly above the site. We spoke about the Library stairs in the pre-game as well as a really key part to gain control of for the attackers, because that's typically the route of ingress down from the top floor where you would approach, and that's Patoxy sitting at the top of them. He's behind a Goyo shield as well, and Live has rotated around, and look at all those Wamai discs directly above them too. They had 3 protecting them, and that's going to help prevent not only them dying to projectiles, but also the Goyo shield from being at risk. So really strongly set up for those Library stairs. You can tell how much Black Dragons don't want to lose control of that area.
Hop in from Miracle as he places down a bit of his utility, conscious that a flank is possible. And no real surprise to see Nomad being brought here on Chalet. It is one of the larger maps and has a lot of opportunity for rotation. 3 staircases mean that defenders can fly under that radar just a little bit easier than usual. I's getting himself in a bit of a long-range engagement, as still FURIA are going to be vying for control over this Library area. Does Lender see? Yes, Lender does. Patoxy falls there through the Vulcan shield, which had exploded. But it isn't going to be enough. FURIA still at a man at disadvantage, and they've lost their hard breacher after that little opening exchange.
FURIA have been working with minimal drones for quite a while now in this round, and it's certainly not going to help them out. Fancy being the next one to fall means that just 2 members of FURIA are left standing. Miracle is the owner of one of those drones. In fact, he's going to be taken down next too. Lender does have Gemini on hand, which he can send in, and 30 seconds means he has the time to do that. But the problem that you have with sending in the Gemini, well, I guess it doesn't matter because Iron's going to kill him anyway. The sound cue giving away his location. But what I was going to say is the problem with sending in the Gemini is by the time he has to act on the information, it will be quite late. But he didn't get there in the end at all, and Black Dragons put a round on the board.
Black Dragons there, I'm sure that roam is much more akin to how they were expecting round number 1 to go, where FURIA weren't really given too much of a foothold. And it was almost in contrast, right? Because in round number 1, we saw FURIA winning all their gunfights. And then in round number 2, we see Black Dragons winning all of their gunfights. And very few kills coming out as true trades or, you know, real true exchanges. We're now going to go to the master bedroom site, which is often seen as one of the more favoured ones. Certainly usually above kitchen, at least, where Black Dragons went to in round number 1. Still avoiding that garage and that basement. I think Chalet is probably one of the maps where you would genuinely expect to see all 4 sites played, which is a really nice thing to be able to say about a map.
I like it when that's an option, for sure, because it means it comes down a lot more to preference. It's something that we see on Oregon here in LATAM because of the kind of personal decision on going between the 2 kitchen sites. In other regions, you don't see kitchen touch quite as much, so you could consider Oregon just a 3-site rotation. But it is really nice because, yeah, it's all down to personal preference. It's all down to playstyle. It's all down to those kinds of things. And that means it differs between the teams. And you always have to be on your toes and very vigilant about what kind of strategies could be brought out. So this is going to be an interesting one because, of course, it's all the way on the top floor. So the vertical play that was as important on those last 2 rounds isn't going to be as much here because there isn't a floor directly above that you have to take control of first.
You can, of course, look to try and apply that reverse vertical pressure, but so far for Chalet, it isn't something that we've seen be all too popular, and I think that is maybe in fact due to how many places there are for the defenders to hide downstairs. There's not a lot of sort of success rate in operating with any surety down there as a lone attacker. The likelihood is that you're going to be rotated on. Key areas usually are the piano room, as that's where we just saw all of the deployable shields and Patoxy playing just here. As he's got a Goyo on top of the piano, a ton of ADSs to assist him as well. And that is usually the toughest nut to crack here for the attackers.
Definitely very hard. You're going to have to spend quite a bit to clear all of that out, as well as most likely wanting to open up the office wall. That's typically done from what's called Canine Balcony, which is directly outside of the office. Some teams do prefer to come in from the north side and take control in from Solarium, but we can see that that office wall was being opened. And this is where these attackers are starting to rotate. Because this map is so big, once you start to take control from one place, you really want to be moving around so you can come in from another.
Miracle going to do something to burn a lot of those ADSs, no doubt in anticipation of a nade getting tossed on through. I think maybe the defender there exploding the Goyo shield just to really put off any attacker from hopping on in. That, or it could have been a nade thrown by Lender. Still, Toxie choosing not to move. He's still got his deployable shield, and of course, with it not being a Vulcan shield, he can play there with quite a bit of surety. He doesn't have to be worried about being engulfed in fiery mess as it tosses through. Just worried about all the splash damage he's going to take from that nade.
Yeah, he's had to actually move behind this wall, which puts him at a risk from the master window, which has a good angle onto that area. Plus, there's the risk of coming in through bathroom, which is exactly what Lender looks like he's doing, taking Patoxy out with him. Yuna does get the trade, which is nice for Black Dragons, and it puts it at a 4 versus 4. But FURIA don't have a ton of time to put off making their push now that we're in the final 20 seconds.
Rare looking now to try and find an angle as Miracle takes out live. The hop in from Fancy. What time does he play? He's playing right now. Finds the last 2. Miracle comes in huge as well. And FURIA, they take round number 3 explosively.
That was a really nice finish to that. And I like the way that FURIA have played on both rounds 1 and round 3, which are the 2 that they did win, where they've kind of left that final push until the very, very end, but it's well coordinated. They've spent the rest of the round quite productively prepping the site so that they know where they have to come in and where those players are going to be, and they can act on that very well. And that nice little shot onto the guy in the bath as well was certainly the cherry on top of the cake, but it's really worked well for FURIA. This is the thing with Black Dragons, is they're great when their key players are left to survive until the end of the round because they can just punish you for that. But you remove them early on and there's a lot of space, and Black Dragons are not necessarily quite as good at holding on to a late round if they are weakened.
I think it comes down to FURIA not giving Black Dragons that room to breathe and really constricting players like Patoxy inside of that piano area where he really didn't do anything for the entirety of the round. He set down his utility and then he played behind that deployable shield. Took a ton of damage from a nade, and then that was kind of it because he wasn't given any space. It's like Black Dragons were permanently being suffocated in that round by FURIA just through the sheer amounts of pressure and the fact that there was so many crossfires. There was no real ability for these defenders to make any significant rotations. That's what FURIA did really well. Now, the question is, can they do that again on different sites? Because we've seen them effectively attack there. We've seen them effectively attack over onto Kitchen. What makes it different about the bar? Now, I'm maybe getting ahead of myself there because we're going to Kitchen in this round, but you better believe we're going to see bar again soon. And FURIA need to kind of try and figure that out, because if they do, they'll almost have the secret sauce at that point.
Yeah, that was one where they didn't successfully constrict Black Dragons, as you're kind of alluding to. But because we're on Kitchen right now, this was where they had success back in round 1, so maybe they will again this time. We're going to have to deal with those electro claws that are holding back a lot of the walls from them. And we spoke about how it is paramount for them to be able to gain control of the upstairs before being able to move down. FURIA did on that round as well leave it until quite late to make that move down below, but by that point they had cleared out all the roamers who were upstairs. Now it looks like there are only 2 players of Black Dragons upstairs, and I want to see how long they decide to hold on to this for. Live is obviously very mobile, but Patoxy before was not. A nice kill down through the floorboards onto Fancy before the walls get open. Patoxy playing further back to maybe give himself some more safety.
Unfortunate timing there for Fancy. I think had he left that push to, you know, another 5 seconds, another 10 seconds, he would have almost guaranteed got away with it. But with the wall still being intact, it was always very difficult. Live's going to be punishing people left, right, and center as he takes down Highs. It's a lot of soft destruction capability gone now on the side of FURIA, so they may nearly have this top floor control, but what are they going to be able to do with it? Patoxy still needing rooting out there as he pushes his way through bathroom and into that solarium area. No doubt going to look to try and drop down, but he has assistance here. Ion has since rotated up. That's information that's now going to be gathered on a drone, as it doesn't seem as though, for the mean part, Ion was actually bothered about dealing with that. Instead, conscious of hearing his goo mines go off in the distance and seeing if there's anyone that he can try and push into.
Just trying to hold off the route in from the bathroom, but look, the solarium walls looking like it's getting open. That's going to push those defenders back down. Miracle trying to get one through the floor. It'll be Rare who collects onto Yuna, very nearly catching the ankles of his teammate in the process. A 3 versus 3 at this point. We're in the final 20 seconds once again. This is where FURIA want to make their push down, but is it going to be as effective as it was in round 1?
Toxic Babe canisters and SMG-11s in the hands of Hugzord are going to make things quite difficult, but Lender will find the kill. Can he get more? No, a double peek for Toxa and Ion, playing it beautifully inside of that trophy room. Back-to-back defense there. They do an exceptional job of taking the round.
Really solid hold, I think, on those trophy stairs at the back, which meant that once FURIA had to make the push down, it was still very difficult for them. And I think Black Dragons being more spread out than they were back in round 1 really helped facilitate that, because it meant that while they could gain early advantages, I think it's fair to say, because of Live's opening kill down through the floorboard, they could gain those advantages from above. They still had a lot of movement they could make, and they still survived long enough that they had that extra manpower that would prevent the push down from FURIA. So whereas last time FURIA had enough space to be able to move down right at the last minute and just have to face Yuna on his own, this time they didn't really have that. They still made the attempt to push down very, very late, as per their MO, ostensibly, but it just was shut down because of what they were up against.
And that's what happens when you give players like Ion and Live that room to breathe. They had plenty of opportunity and plenty of space to work in round number 4, and they used it exceptionally well. We can see currently we've seen 4 rounds of play, and Ion's actually got himself 6 kills and only 2 deaths. So doing some serious work there and lifting quite the weight of the kills on the side of Black Dragons at the moment. A bit more spread out if you look over toward the side of Furia, with 3 players all sat there on 4 kills, Rare, Fancy and Lender. Still yet to see much of a contribution from Highs, but Knight is relatively young here. Now, attacking onto Bar. Once again, a site that we did see Furia struggle with ever so slightly. Lives allowed to harass on these Solarium stairs. Ooh, narrowly missing out on a shot there. Question is any player going to challenge the drone hole? Yes. We are going to see a little bit of drone hole action from Fancy, but it is not going to result in anything. Not even a little shot at the ankles as Live passes on through.
Yeah, he'll be able to just change his approach, move away. Probably better than giving too much away anyway, as it stands. You got members of Furia who are holding all these various windows. Now, as you mentioned, Furia didn't successfully attack onto Bar last time. We saw a really strong hold from Iron at the top of the library stairs before, guarded by not just a Vulcan shield, but also what seemed like an entire universe worth of my magnets. There are also the 2 ADSs there as well, so he's really doing the same thing here. And just that allowed him so much space to just hold on to and move forward at the end when required.
Furia have got themselves in upstairs, having suffered no losses so far, which is always going to be a good thing. Looks like rotations are now going to be made, particularly by Rare, as Highs looks to challenge. He had some intel there as to a player at the top of those main stairs. That someone is going to be Ion. Repping the nice seasonal skin, I must say. Miracle now looks to push and apply some pressure in through the top of this library corridor.
Finally, the 1Y magnets being burned out. The air jab goes in as well as the explosion of the shield follows. Live just trying to get an angle onto the window, but actually loses out in that engagement. This is great for Furia because this is something that wasn't achieved before. Now they just want to get control of libraries, so trying to push in on this player who's over here. But I was going to say it looks like it could go in the favor of Furia, but 2 kills for Patoxy. Suddenly it's going back round the other way, however, and now it's just Hugsword on his own. Once again, left on the site alone, very similarly to what we saw in round number 1, except that time it was Yuna, and it didn't work out for Black Dragons. You don't want to write it off before it's happened. He's trying to get rid of the drones so he can't be sought out from Furia, but you can't deny that this is a very pressurizing situation.
A tough spot for Hugsword. His saving grace is going to be the C4 that he has in his pocket. Pressure still on Furia to either find him or get that diffuser down, and they're going to go with option number 1. They're going to say, look, we're just going to find you. Lender pushes on in. Looks like he may have had a little bit of intel with the way that he was moving, and just like that, we can see him swing and pick that kill on up. A close round, but Furia did manage to gain the lion's share of the kills after they initially started to flood on in. Still potential here for Black Dragons to take us at an equal 3-3 split and continue the overtime trend that we seem to have here on Chalet if both these teams don't have too much separating them. But for the time being, Furia are on top.
That was just a really nice example of adaptation from Furia. They recognized wholly what the problem was back in round number 2 that prevented them from winning their attack, and they dealt with that problem very effectively. Now, heading into Master, again, they won this round on their attack before. When we look back at the other site that they won on the attack, which was Kitchen, Black Dragons actually won that out the second time. So the question I have here is, which is going to be more effective? Is it going to be Furia's propensity for winning this site, or is it going to be Black Dragon's adaptability? And this is going to, I think, answer a lot of questions for me across the course of this series, is which of these two teams is going trying to be the most self-aware and adaptive when it comes to having to change the way that they approach a site, or playing on something that they've proven to themselves that they can do well.
I think we're maybe seeing a different lineup from Black Dragons as well here in the Cade pick. They've been playing quite a lot of Mute so far, and Una this time is on the Cade. I don't believe he played Cade last time we saw this site. There does seem to be a little bit of a switch around going on there in terms of positioning, and that could be a nice little edge really for Black Dragons, because we've already seen what happens when FURIA aren't given that opportunity, or should I say don't take that opportunity to really try and single out these roamers. Fancy, he's got himself into quite the predicament. He's just on outside of Library, a place we call Library Corridor. He's now actually rotating his way onto main stairs, as he's likely required below to try and deal with that Electroclaw from Cade.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was thinking as well, actually, is because they've electrified the office wall, that is going to have to be dealt with from below, because Thatcher has been banned out, no one's playing Carly. The only way to deal with it is to shoot out the floor below and try and find the Electroclaw and simply shoot it manually. That requires some droning and some coordination, and you can see that it has been dealt with, as you can actually hear that hard breach being used on the office wall. So there's one of the Selmers at the very least that has opened that up, and Highs is going to be holding on to that angle from outside.
Seems as though a Z-ping for a deployable shield has perhaps been dealt with as well, as Fancy is really fulfilling that support Ash role right now, but make no mistake, I'm sure he'll be in and amongst the kills before long. It's going to be rare to open the account over onto live through the hole that has been made in that office wall. And that could be a nice little entryway there. More information now coming out on the drone, and you can see that Patoxa is doubting his ability to play inside a piano. He doesn't have the same shield to play behind that we've seen him have previously. Just one shield on top of the piano, which is of course a Vulcan shield. Doesn't want to get too close to that as the seconds continue to tick on down. We can see a pinch is setting itself up quite nicely here from the side of FURIA, as Rare is maybe even looking to try and hop on into sight, as for the time being it looks relatively free. Last second info now being gained, as Patoxy is looking to be a bit of a difference maker, making sure he's got a clear challenge onto the big window, as he doesn't want to make sure that anyone can swing through and pick up some easy free kills. Hopping into that piano window has got to be imminent now, and it looks as though it has already happened, and it's going to be led by Fancy. Una finds a trade back, an eye on a second. The Toxic Babe canisters, unfortunately, for Black Dragons are missing, and the plant will be confirmed. Ion now left in a 1 versus 3, as Fancy's gone pretty massive inside a piano area, and now the big slow Goyo has to push all the way on in. He's going to be heard a mile away, and well, to get 3 kills here and a defuse is going to be relatively unlikely, especially when you've got someone like Fancy on the R4C.
It was a really well-coordinated round there from FURIA. I especially like the way that they applied the pressure onto Piano, knowing that Patoxy was in there and he couldn't play too close to that shield. Not only did they have presence south of the site, they also had presence on the window, and that forced Patoxy back towards the master doorway. And as you noted, Highs was right outside on the upside-down rappel of the big master window. Having control of that window meant that Patoxy really had nowhere to move, but it also meant he had to watch multiple angles. There's also the risk that someone could have come in through the bathroom window as well. So that is a lot of places to watch out for if you are just one guy in this really, really pivotal room. He didn't win out the gunfights that happened in there. It got cleared very, very effectively from FURIA. They could all move in. They already had the office wall open by that point. The Toxic Babe canisters had been expended, and straight in they can go in with the plant. And actually, that was the first round where they did make a plant because they hadn't had to before. So it was a really nice, clean round, I think, there from FURIA. But now it's their turn to show what they've got on the defense. Heading in with a 4-2 split. I'd say that Chalet being quite or at least at the moment, considered aggressive map. It's not the end of the world to think that you ended 4-2 on the attack. But how their defense will compare, I suppose, remains to be seen.
I feel like coming out on top after your attacking phase always puts you in a good spot because you just get that level of confidence. I always think that if a team is happy to go to a map, it's because they're good at both attacking and defending that map. But the defense is where you're looking to see that true creativity, you know, and you look and see that true individuality in that setup. And I think that's maybe what we're seeing brought here by FURIA already. You know, they've chosen some different operators. We've got an Aruni here. That already spells to me a bit of a nightmare. Like, you know, Black Dragons, they played the Wamai. These guys are playing onto the Aruni, and Aruni is hitting some shots. Ion getting caught out there on the upside down rappel. Just unfortunate timing. Classic Siege timing when things really aren't going your way. Fancy! How is he threading the eye of that needle onto such a narrow angle yet again? Continually challenging onto that window, onto Una.
Oh, and live as well. He'll be the next one to go down. FURIA don't even need anything fancy or complicated here because they just seem to be getting all these kills on windows, apparently. Hugsword and Potoxi, the only two left from Black Dragons, one of them being in the solarium area, and FURIA aren't going to be too naive to that, I shouldn't imagine. All they have to do is start to move on forward. Hugsword taken straight out, and now it's all on Potoxi. He's on the roof. He's just chilling. He can watch the diffuser, and he can watch onto this window, but really, what's he going to be able to achieve all on his own in a 1 versus 5?
This is like one of my ranked games where the Ash is the one that's on the roof at like 2 minutes and everyone else is dead. And it's just, you're just sort of looking at it going like, you probably could have done with your Potoxi at some point within the round, and the Ash is going like, I was droning someone in, like, you've all just gone in and died. It's just a big sort of finger point and blame game.
It's the sudden, I'm a support player, what do you mean?
Well, that's it. It's like, look, I'm trying to use my utility, like, where do you need me? It's like, the moment has passed. Like, the plan has been thrown out of the window. We're not even on plan A, B, C, or D. We're on plan, like, W or something. Like, everything's gone to pot, and we're in a bit of a tough spot. He's getting himself into some gunfights. I feel like he's going to get run out on here. There's so many windows to watch. There's so much potential here for FURIA to try and get a peek out onto him. He'd maybe be better dropping off and getting himself hidden away and trying to take this last 35 seconds as a time to chat with the team, because that has gone drastically wrong there, Gio.
Yeah, Ollie, all I'm going to say is I don't think they're on plan W. I think they're on plan L. Although that was a nice kill from Potoxi, I suppose. He can jump in, but yeah, they're ready. So really not plan W, I don't think. For Black Dragons, they're probably not going to feel too great about that round. That might be a bit of a write-off.
I mean, I was just thinking of a letter in the alphabet that came... I was just thinking of a random letter in the alphabet that wasn't toward the front, and I got W. Maybe that's just because I've got a winner's mindset.
Is that what it is?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, we'll go with it. Well, regardless, that is a perfect example of what Black Dragons don't want to happen next time. I mean, even the first kill in that round onto Iron, I was thinking, was Iron just staring at him? It was like, oh, hi, yeah, fancy seeing you on this window. Oh, yeah. A lot of it was all on windows, man. Like, FURIA did not have a problem getting aggressive there, and Black Dragons, after everything we've seen from the capability of this team, should have made those fights a lot harder to take, I think.
Yeah, it all seemed to come too easily to FURIA in that round. It's like they were... I'm not saying they were gifted kills on a plate, but they were gifted at opportunities to gain those kills, and that's what they took exceptionally well. You can't fault a team for, you know, playing the game that's in front of them, and that's exactly what FURIA did. Black Dragons just seemed to make a catalogue of errors, really, in the run-up to approaching that site, and we didn't even really get to see anything that FURIA had actually set up there.
No, not really. I mean, that was one of the points that I made, was like, it doesn't really matter what the complexity of their defensive setup is, because they're just gonna kill. So I feel like just to give them some credit, we should take some time now to have a look at that and their complexities, which I'm sure they would like to show off. So they've come to Kitchen here for this next site. Can't say there's anything particularly special about what they brought. Again, we're seeing the Aruni. It can make life pretty difficult. sort of like a glorified castle, I suppose. You have the denial in the form of the mute, and I mean breach denial by that. Smoke for the plant denial. I mean, it's all very standard stuff. You have those shields as well that are likely to be utilized in a similar way to how Black Dragons did. I wouldn't be surprised if there were those players present in Piano, but Toxie gets the opening kill this time, so already that's very different to how it was before, that he's going to push up into Solarium knowing that he's chasing onto someone and catches Highs out in the bathroom. Great opener for Black Dragons.
Finding the opening kill this time is going to be the start of their successes. Managed to take down two really important players as well. Highs and Miracle both had decent games so far, but more importantly, it's the utility that they possess. Time wasting on the smoke, C4 potentially on the mute, and of course those shotguns that are a nightmare. It puts a bit more pressure now on the remaining players on the side of Furia, and that pressure is going to continue to mount as more flawless kills come out. I say that, and Rare does manage to take down Live, Lender a second, and this now looks winnable once again. But ring around the rosy, Patoxy knows exactly where Lender is playing here, and it looks as though Lender could just be aiming a little bit too high. The pre-fire comes out in Patoxy's favor. He's stepping up to the plate here in this round. Rare will come through with a nice trade, however, as these headshots from Mozzie are ringing very true. Gets a glimpse at another opportunity onto Hugzord. 50 seconds remain, diffuser in the hands of Yuna. He could do well to try and confirm that and lock it in, because Rare has a chance here. It looks as though he's potentially got some information, goes for the hop up. Yuna says, nope, no plant required, headshots only tonight.
It was certainly a valiant effort. It's really interesting to see the way that they actually approached that as well, with so much emphasis up on the north side of the map. And as you quite aptly put it, the whole ring around the rosy thing, you know, one guy knows that the other one's just a tiny bit further down the staircase, or he's just behind this tiny little wall, and you're creeping up on each other knowing that you're each there, and it's just about who makes the right assessment of that direct confrontation in terms of who is going to end up winning that. So it's nice for Black Dragons to be able to put another round on the board. They definitely had a much better start to that round than they did in the previous one, with Patoxy opening up with the 2 kills. But the fact that they couldn't capitalize on that in a way that made it more definitive is potentially disappointing when we saw how well Furia did it, put in that position. However, regardless, they still won the round. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And Furia will be moving on to the next site, which will be Bar.
Yeah, I don't think that Furia are going to be too upset there at dropping a round. It could have been a bit cleaner from Black Dragons. I would have really liked to see the focus being on to get that plant down and try and cover, try and provide some cover onto Yuna while that plant is confirmed, because that really is the best way to try and get the round one out. Then trying to challenge, a lucky one-tap headshot or a lucky flick or a wallbang, it's all stuff that does occasionally happen. And I just kind of got the feeling there that there was potential for that in that round from Rare. Sorry, it was Rare, of course, in that final few seconds. But we do move on. We move on to a new site. Going to be down to Furia to show us that they've got a deeper ability to win here on defense than just upstairs in Master.
Now, Furia, quite similarly to Black Dragons, have brought both the Jaeger and the Wamai, so you can really bunker down and have that similar setup on the library stairs with the extra protection. C4 won't be catching out Hugsword as it explodes there in the window, and that does leave Lender without that, but he will still stay in the Solarium for now. Whether or not they do have that same kind of setup at the top of library stairs, I'm actually not sure, and we're probably about to see. It looked like there was a shield there, and that's it, right next to Highs. He's spacing out his discs a lot more than we saw Black Dragons do, so they will catch any projectiles and explode progressively further down the corridor, and I suppose that makes it a bit safer for the shield, because if you put those discs right next to the shield is still going to end up blowing up. So, interesting slight change to the setup. Whether or not it will be significant enough to have a completely different outcome, we just don't know yet.
Highs and Fancy both playing that risky game of playing in and around a Goyo, and Just get the impression it's only a matter of time until one of them pops through. There's going to have to be something done by Black Dragons for that to happen, though. And at the moment, it seems as though they're going for a very slow and steady push, as they've managed to waste quite a good portion of time on this roam. There's only 1 minute and 10 seconds left remaining. And it doesn't seem as though Black Dragons have still got clear and free access to the majority of this top floor. Still, hard angles being held and the defenders allowed to be holding onto them. I just don't know where Black Dragons have their in here.
Yeah, they seem to be really struggling. I mean, Fancy is going to relinquish some position on the library corridor just by jumping down into Fireplace. But, you know, that also means he's free later on to come round and flank. You can see 2 players here just on the lower portion of the library stairs. So they're really surrounding this key area that just hasn't been cleared out by Black Dragons. Throwing in the smokes as they potentially try to push up through the library corridor or even into library itself. Lender finally gets the opening kill, and that's onto Live, removing the buck off the board. Red's going to throw out a C4. It's a great catch onto Yuna at the same time as Hugsword bringing down Highs, and suddenly there's all this warfare happening on these stairs. Iron gets a 2k, but he is soon taken down, and Black Dragons didn't quite go for the diffuser. It's just Patoxy. He's on his own. He's going to go in for it. Lender, does he know where he is? Yes, he does. A headshot right at the end, and Furia take round number 9.
Certainly scrappy stuff, and for that to come down to a 1 versus 1, it is rather surprising, particularly given the position that Black Dragons were in at the 20-second mark. It is, however, going to lock match points and guarantee points on the night toward Furia, and they've got plenty of time to try and convert this. Black Dragons, that is only the 3rd round that they have won so far. And Black Dragons have only won 3 rounds so far, and so far none of them have been very sort of convincing or repeatable. They've certainly not had a great streak on the attack, having only had 1 round. I really see Furia taking this and running away with it, Gio.
Oh, they've looked incredibly impressive so far, really well coordinated. And the shocking thing is Black Dragons haven't even looked bad necessarily, and especially on the rounds that they have won, they've looked incredibly well in sync and with some really good plays on almost all of the rounds that we've had. It's just Furia's ability to be able to win them out, to have those setups, to have the attacking coordination back in the first half has won out overall way more. And now they find themselves on map point. Suddenly, Black Dragons have got quite a tall task ahead of them that maybe feels almost like a monolith just because of the differential in rounds that it's kind of escaped past them.
It certainly must be feeling like quite a difficult to achieve task on the side of Black Dragons, and they've got to try and keep their mental game up and on point. But it mustn't be easy, because let's not forget, the last time that we saw this site, it was kind of over before it started, and there was almost 2 minutes left, and Patoxy was left on the roof, having lost every single one of his teammates to some sort of aggressive window play that Furia were trying to bring. Now, I'm sure that we're going to see a little bit of something different here, as we can't expect these players of Black Dragons to continually make these same mistakes, but there's got to be a difference maker. We can't see them wasting almost the entirety of the round and not really gaining anything for it. They need to try and pin down some of these roamers on the side of Furia.
It is really interesting to me that Furia have opted to come to Kitchen instead of Master. Now that Master is open and they won their defense on Master, but they lost their defense on Kitchen. Very interesting. That's a great shot onto Yuna, dropping the diffuser down cold as well. That'll have to be collected by the rest of his team. But really beautiful there from Rare as he holds control still of that top floor, and that means that the big window on Master as well is going to have to be filled by someone else on the attacking side.
Hard breach gone as well on the side of Black Dragons. Everything just points toward making this more and more difficult for them. They have come down on the wrong side of luck here tonight in a couple of the engagements that we've seen happening, but losing the hard breach early on is fairly unforgivable stuff. Fortunately for them, It seems as though Live has got himself into a nice position inside of Trophy to at least start applying some pressure onto the site, but the diffuser still needs to be recovered if we're going to see a plant go down, which is looking increasingly more unlikely as Lender and Miracle light us up orange, gaining 2 quick kills, leaving Ion and Hugzord with a lot of work to do. Still a full minute remains, so it is possible for them to be able to get something happening between themselves here, but their location is going to be known. Goes for a smoke just to try and cut off some lines of sight, and Hugzord is fighting multiple opponents there. There's an army of SMG-11s at the other side of that corridor pointed in your direction. A nade will net him 1, but Ion gets a bit too aggressive and peeks over into Fancy. Hugzord says there is nothing for it. I am going to go and storm the site. I'm going to try and make something happen, but he gets cut down by Lender and Furia. They take Chalet.
And they made that look so decisive and dominant as well. And this was my match of the day. I thought this was going to be significantly closer than it was. Really disappointing round, or game, I should say, for Black Dragons. And the fact that in that last round as well, they were working with 1 drone at the end, and that was a pre-placed as well. It wasn't one that either of them could control, so it was really flying blind for them, whereas at every point Furia looked in such control.